COVID-19 originated in animals sold in a so-called wet market in China.
Small step for man, giant leap for mankind.
All right, Conspiracy Conversation crowd, welcome to Saturday morning. It's good to be with you and enjoying a great conversation. You know, one of the things that I didn't expect when we began this journey is the amount of content that you guys would be sending me that I could be able to be working through, taking in stuff I hadn't heard of. I'm like, that was it. And I was kind of a curious mind, you know, to start with, looking for answers and digging things through it. And I tell you what, you guys have made my spare time completely disappear, and it's been for the good. I'm enjoying a lot of things, a lot of good books, a lot of stuff that we'll get to in the future. I'll be honest with you, some stuff I'm just not gonna get to. But I got an author today, and the pulse of this is to bring people into the conversation that have spent their 10,000 hours deep diving on a topic, that have earned the right to kind of come to the table and share, hey, this is what I think, this is what I see, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what I found, this is what I know, and kind of differentiate something from what people think and what they know, the two kind of separate a little bit. I don't bring people onto this show to iron out their wrinkles, to show them where they're wrong, to debate or argue. It's to set something on the table, because I think if I treat you as an audience as intelligent adults, and if I put a pizza on the table and we sit back, we can all argue whether it's supreme or pepperoni or deep dish or thin. But if somebody comes on and says, no, that's a hamburger, we can probably work this out ourselves. We can have intelligent conversations, and without calling each other names and bringing the other person down, we can just point to truth. And I think that together we can come up with probably better ideas than what's being just force-fed and told you. And I think for some of you, you've woken to like, hey, I've got some muscles in here. I can use them myself. And there's some things I thought that were close, and some things that were close, and I'm learning and growing. And that's called being alive. That's what separates you from your dog, is the ability to take in new information and learn and grow. I want to read you a couple of quotes. This book today is dedicated a couple of places, but one to his three sons. And he says, I want you to stand firm in the Lord to the end. You will not be disappointed. That'll have bigger context as we get into today's content, because the end might be looking kind of crazy, and we're going to talk about some stuff that's kind of interesting. There was a foreword written here by Steve Quayle, and we talk about these topics. I'm going to throw some things out there. It says, person in this book, CERN, quantum computing, black physics, biotech interface, transhumanism, artificial intelligence, geoengineering, terraforming, strong delusions, the wearing out of the saints. There's a whole list of topics. I'm like, every single one of those would be an incredible conspiracy conversation. Today's guest has a military background, a background also in church planting, church developing. But I think more than anything else, he's an incredible voice to help strengthen people and encourage them and move them towards personal responsibility. What can I do to sort of move from the back seat of a car that's being driven by a drunk driver? How do I move into the front, shove them to the side, and say, you know what, I'm going to put my hands on the wheel, and I'm going to take control of this, and I'm going to look up to the Lord for guidance on this. And so, you know, wherever you land on that, don't be, you know, twisted on that. Say, I don't know where the Lord is on this, but, you know, you might be a little shocked at the things that God knows, the things God's concerned about, and the things that God's not caught off guard with, was probably calling a shot, probably even before you got here. So pretty exciting. So I'm really excited to introduce the author of Omega Dynamics, Mr. Jamie Walden.
Yeah, brother. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Good morning. Well, it says a lot about somebody if they write a book, but the book also has an accompanying workbook. That says a lot, because it says, hey, this isn't here just to entertain you and tell you how smart I am. We actually got a workbook, a study guide to go with it, because you're an equipper, a trainer. I look at what you do, whatever facet it is I've heard you talk about, and the reason you came in, people started sharing your videos with me. It's more like more of a military boot camp in whatever facet of life. It's like, hey, to train, equip, launch, and send out, and to lift people up.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, just for the listeners that don't know me, I have a background in the Marine Corps infantry and was in a specialized platoon in the Marine Corps with a pretty cool mission set. And got out as a sergeant, did some time in there. Was on the push to Baghdad in '03, so the initial march up, and did a lot of training all over the earth, everywhere in every facet. Got out, did the degree thing in history and law enforcement. Worked with the U.S. Marshals for a stint. Was a city cop for a stint. Switched back over, got my paramedic. Was doing tactical EMS, like SWAT type medic stuff, and on a PD, and eventually switched over to fire EMS because at the fire department I could be a firefighter, a paramedic, on the tech rescue team, a rescue boat operator, and
Wow.
still at times work in tactical EMS. They would pull me for different things, so that kind of birthed like a international, disaster response kind of specialty type of background, just because of those disciplines. And it was throughout that experience where really I started my eyes being open to stuff and doing a deep dive and the reality of the world around us. I know your listeners are going to be very adept and in tune to the reality of how things are actually functioning. In particular, the Western centric paradigm, but in general, the whole rest of the globe, and what has long been held to be conspiracy theory. We all know that it has nothing to do with theory. Theory is pie in the sky, right? Theory is an intangible. It's an obscure. It's holographic. It's conspiratorial, but it's definitely not theory. It's just conspiracies, right, against humanity at large. And what we're seeing right now is this convergent zenith of all things related in our corporal reality and biblical prophecy intersecting right now in our generation. And it's at a breakneck speed that I think most people aren't prepared to endure. And so that's why I've had this burden to really strengthen and equip a warrior class of Christians for the days that are not ahead, but the days that are here.
I think it's a crazy path that led you to where you are, but God does that a lot of times. I don't know that David knew he was like in giant training his whole life. He's out, killed a bear, killed a lion. He's being diligent. He's being, sent off to the side to do something else. It's kind of a roundabout path that sort of got him to his destiny. But when that came, he was prepared. You train people in handguns and self-defense and survival, and also, spiritually and you deal in science. You get into a lot of spaces, and it's like, I don't know that there would have been a straight path to lead you to be doing what you're doing. There's no high school guidance counselor that says, "Oh, well, here's
I couldn't write the
poster
story
on
if
the
I
wall."
tried, and there's some even gaps in that. I want to say pedigree. I count it all as lost compared to knowing Christ, right? But and then in that time we've lived overseas. We liquidated everything, became missionaries in the Dominican Republic for a couple of years, and came back and was burdened to write and publish this book, and so then after that, a good friend of mine, Timothy Alberino, who does just seminal research, seminal work, and invited me to be a part of an expedition in Peru for 3 months for what was to be a network TV show studying antediluvian archaeology. So we were in the jungles of Peru and the deserts of the Atacama and in the Amazon basin, digging up elongated skulls of the Paracan people, because it's all related to the Great Deception and related to all the other machinations of men that are coming in a convergent zenith right now in our generation. So it is this weird. People go, and now I'm a church planner, and so people go, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "Dude, I have no idea. Just whatever's in front of me for the day. I have no clue what I do, but whatever it is, I'm doing it." So
I agree. We've had a similar path that our family kind of got used to after a while. They're like, "Oh, that's just David and Stacy," being David and Stacy.
Yeah.
But we didn't have this like, hey, I work for Ford and for 45 years, or that kind of a thing. It's just kind of being a God chaser. And I'd rather drop everything I have. We've done the same thing, sold everything. We lived in orphanages in Mexico for a few years when our kids were in high school, and it's like, I'd rather go pursue and go to where God wants me doing something than to be doing something and trying to talk him into joining me.
Oh man, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
No matter what, I'd rather go build a building around where God is than to try and trick him into coming into my building, and doing it.
Yeah.
And we're in crazy times where we need people, and I look around. We've been a part of the ReAwaken America events for probably 24 months. And it's, guys like Clay Clark. I don't know if you know Clay, but, he
Yeah.
manages and owns parts like 160 different companies and wanted nothing to do with, religion or politics, for most of his life. And all of a sudden it's like COVID and this happens. And it's like, I'm going to sue the mayor of Tulsa and to keep people's businesses open. All of a sudden this whole other path. And it's like, wow. Come to know it, God was probably preparing him for 20 years for this moment. And there's dozens of people like that, whether they were in the medical field or military, a lot of different backgrounds. And I see this thread a lot. We're going to get into some of the content that you have about the world, where it's at, and the timing of things and how that all ties together. But it's encouraging that as dark as stuff gets, and the more people, if you watch mainstream media and you get fearful and you're like, oh, what's, hide behind the water heater and you hope God comes back tomorrow and you just want to escape, basically some version of that. Maybe it's a glorified church version of hiding in bed with the covers over your head. But I tell you what, there are so many people that are rising up right now that almost accidentally were prepared for this time. And there's no other way to explain it than God really does have a plan, and people are walking in it. And I think waking up to, hey, I have a role to play right now, and it's not hiding behind the water heater. I can be an active participant, not just in the world, but in my world.
Absolutely. I mean, and again, that's not just hypothetical. I mean, that's just straight Bible 101. I mean, we're told that it's going to be the times the likes of which never has been and never will be again. And that if Christ didn't shorten the days, there would be no flesh left alive, which actually in the Hebraic text is there would be no flesh left that could receive salvation. So that gets into the transhumanism movement and even all the stuff that went on for the last 3 years that people are taking into their bodies, that's rewriting things at a genetic level, right? mRNA, messenger ribonucleic acid, which the only other translation for messenger in the English lexicon is angel ribonucleic acid. This gets back to the Genesis 3, Genesis 6 rebellion, the seed of the serpent versus the genetics of those guys versus the genetics of the created image of God at war to the final culmination that Christ even says, when I return, will there be any flesh that could even receive salvation? Because they're not mine. And that gets into the whole scorched earth policy of the power of the darkness, where it's like God says, I will destroy all the elements with fire. Why? Why does he have to destroy all the elements of fire? Because they're not his. The mosquitoes aren't even his, right, thanks to Bill Gates. And the cows and the grass and the corn and the dirt and the geoengineering of our skies. Nothing says, including the very genetic makeup at our mitochondrial DNA, protein-based, encoding level is systematically being attacked as a wholesale cosmic multidimensional warfare against the Most High God. So there is this interconnectivity, but right smack in the middle of it, coming back to your point, David, is that he says, but those who do know their God will be strong and go forth and do daring feats of valor. Daniel 11:32. It says, at that exact same time, those who are wise in the Lord will turn many back to righteousness, and they'll shine like bright shining stars in the vast expanse of heaven. At that exact same time, Luke 21 says, when you begin to see all these things taking place, you stand up and you look up. And it's like, you don't hide yourself in your prayer closet. At the exact same time, we're told in even Isaiah 61:2, like, you arise and you shine, for the glory of God is upon you. Though darkness is over the earth and thick darkness is over the people, you stand up and you get in the fight. And so we have this very distinct delineation regarding the reality of what's getting ready to break out onto the scene, that 99.97% of the people are going to be overcome. But as we're told biblically, there will be those who do overcome. They overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, and they do not love their lives so much as they're afraid to lose it. They're so secure in the completed work of Christ that they will fight to the death because they know it has no sting. They know it's been swallowed up. They so understand the sufficiency of Christ that there's nothing that can make them balk, which, David, is why the number one threat in America political system is a white evangelical male who believes in the end times. FBI training, DHS training, FEMA training, et al. Why? because they're unstoppable. You can't control them. You can't malign them. You can't browbeat them. You can't take their property from them. You can't force things on them. They're so secure in the Lord that you can't do anything to them. They're the number one threat. That's why all communism, which all communism is theosophy, if people aren't familiar with theosophical ideology, which is all Luciferianism, the first thing you do is destroy authentic Christianity, and you create a counterfeit, weak Christianity like NAR, like the Annie Stanleys, like the Bethel, like the Hillsongs, like the Joyce Meyers and the Beth Moores. I'll call them all out by name. And you create this counterfeit one that's completely powerless. Oh, that's interesting. That's prophetic fulfillment too. It says they'll have the form of godliness, but deny the power of it. They'll be lovers of self. They'll be lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, right? They refuse to acknowledge God. Knowing the truth, they neither glorify him nor gave him thanks. Because they love not the truth, he gives them over to strong delusions. It's not that they don't know the truth. It's not that they don't know God. They just don't love it. They love self more and then enter in all the garbage that we see breaking out on the scene.
And that's, I think there's never been a better time for the church to have answers, and to really step up, because you got a book that kind of covers the craziest stuff ever. If people into, conspiracy theories, man, we've done the JFK assassination, all these kind of things, but you want like interesting stuff in the world. If you have a neighbor or a friend that's a Christian and you think they're boring and there's nothing in it, like they probably are not in the Word, because you mentioned,
exactly
Genesis 6. It's like there's some interesting stuff in there. It's like the craziest things you can imagine. Yeah. It is full of it. It's if you think the Bible's boring, you've not really read it. Most of it they couldn't even make into a movie, because like how would you even portray that on screen? So we've sort of been there before, a lot of times, and God is not new to the craziness and attempts of evil to try to destroy what he's created. And he also is never caught off guard. God's not surprised. When God looks up, he sees nothing. He's not chewing his nails. He's not surfing the internet, looking for message boards to find out what's happened next. He wasn't surprised by Kevin McCarthy being, ousted. But he's not like, well, I didn't see that coming. God saw everything coming. I think our role here, and what I'm excited, for you to share is no matter what is going on, no matter what comes, we do not have to be in fear, but we can lean into it and say, God, where are you in this? And how can I let go of anything that I hold on? Like this pen's going to keep me safe, or my money or my job or my title or whatever. Like I'll let it all go. It's like, what's God doing? And how do I partner with that? Because we're in a time now where they say there's no atheist in a foxhole. The whole world's a foxhole.
Yeah.
And so people are looking for the answers, and God's got them.
Yeah, and even that's an interesting statement, because, a lot of people think that the whole end of the age and all this convergence stuff, with global governance, space-based weapons platforms, off-Earth bases, all the directed energy weapon, blah, 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 transhumanism, CERN, portals, Stargate opening stuff. Again, what you were saying, David, is the Christians should have the answers for all this, because it's all in the Word. You know who I love talking to? I hate talking to lukewarm, narcissistic Christians. They are my kryptonite. Christians are my kryptonite, because the majority of them, I should say.
What about behavior
so
modification Christians? Like Christianity being defined by, hey, we got you to stop smoking. Like, or something like some behavior-based appearance thing.
It's all behavior modification, right?
Yeah.
Don't drink, cuss, or chew, or date girls that do.
Yeah.
But the authentic biblical Christianity is legit. And so I love talking to the witches and the warlocks and the occultists and the New Agers and the whatever they are, because I'm like, oh, bro, you're into Stargates? Hey, let me tell you about my guy. That's all in the Bible. Oh, like you're all about transhumanism and you want self-directed evolutionary process of the species with Elon Musk and Bill Gates and all your other hive mind Neuralink stuff. Hey, that's cool. Guess what? That's in the Bible too. Like, oh, you want to talk about UFOs and weird, creepy things that are extra dimensional? Are there extraterrestrial? They're beyond Earth. Let me tell you about all kinds of crazy creatures in the heavenly realms listed throughout scriptures. And a third of them rebelled, and a third of them are in open insurrectionary warfare against humanity. Yeah, I can talk about UFOs. I can talk about Stargates. I can talk about necromancy and grave soaking and blah, blah, blah. Like whatever you're trying to tap into, homie, bro, I can come right at you with it straight through the biblical lens in a way that tells you, if this is true about God, then could you can see that maybe Jesus is who he said he was.
Yeah.
And that sin is what you think it is, and that the forgiveness of sins is what you think it is, and that there is an eternal life, and there is a cosmic warfare for the souls of men against the glory of God being waged on a multidimensional battlefield that you don't understand. Could you concede that? Like I can look out my back window here, and I'm at Mesa Verde National Park, so I can see the Mesa Verde. I'm in the Four Corners region. This area, you talk to somebody out here, they'll go skinwalkers, Bigfoot, UFOs, whatever. And there's not one Christian in the region that has an answer for them. Not one. This is like a cultic center of the universe. Like from the Anasazi Pueblo to the Navajo to even the Aztec, Mayan, Incan, all trace their roots in some form of another of their creation story to this Four Corners right here over my shoulder that I can look out my window at. And and nobody's given the answers. They don't have any answers. Why mRNA? Why was it a global hive mind? Why was there a collective consciousness created through a satanic, traumatic experimentation and full-on global satanic ritualistic abuse? The traumatization of the terraforming the earth with fear. Why are they spraying the skies the way they do? Why do they need Space Force and space-based weapons platforms? Why are they talking about arts to get off the earth? And why are they smashing atoms into each other, trying to tear a veil in the seen and unseen worlds over the ancient land of Apollo or Apollyon, which is specifically mentioned in Scripture? And they're trying to tear. What is going on, and why in the world isn't every pastor in America teaching the people these things so that we might have a hope, one, in the middle of it, and two, that they might be strengthened and equipped to endure to the end, because those who endure to the end will receive the crown of life, not those who really like their golden ticket to the Wonka factory. It is not about your golden ticket into the Wonka factory, right?
That's good.
And so it's like there is this perpetual, radically significant overlap of all of it, and nobody's equipping the people with ears to hear for it. And yet the Spirit says, all the letters to the churches in the book of Revelation, those with ears to hear, let them hear what the Spirit is saying. Those with ears to hear, let them hear what the Spirit is saying. It's like, bro, do you have the ears to hear? This is gnarly stuff. It's coming down the pipeline. It's in your face all day long. And you don't even know what you're looking at. You don't even understand the predictive programming that's in every single one of the movies that you're seeing in real time. You don't even understand the Kabbalistic language that Trump, that you so highly venerate, is using in every single language. Do you know what Kabbalism is? Do you know what he's saying when he's talking about the Great Awakening? Do you know that that's Theosophy 101? And the Great Awakening that he's talking about is not the Great Awakening that you think he's talking about? And it's like, do you know where this is all leading? It's going somewhere. They're systematically taking us to their counterfeit, perverse, millennial reign of total lawlessness on every single level, and the complete destruction of even the human genome. And like, it's war. The war is so significant that they're even making war on your biology. They're making war on what it means to be a man or a woman. They're making war on children. It's such radical, savage war that they're making war on children before they can be born. They're making war they're making war on everything. And then if they do happen to be born, then they're going to make war on them by feminism and taking the moms out of the home and then putting the children in the indoctrination facilities once they get their 6 weeks of maternity leave. Now we get them for the rest of their lives. Now we get the critical race. Now we get the NEA, reprobate, communist, tranny loving freak shows, teaching your children every day for the next 18 years of their life. I mean, it is war on a level we don't even understand. And even this impending World War III and the Apophis asteroid, which is going to be visible in the sky in 2025, and the World Economic Forum Great Reset, and all the consolidation of all the supply chains and the economic machinations on the face of the earth, and all the digitization of currencies and all the digital IDs backed by biometric data. All of it is because of a singular purpose and goal, and they are not going to be denied where they're taking us.
I want to jump into two things based on what you said. I wasn't planning on getting into CERN, but I do want to just bring this up because for people coming into this, say you came into this room, there's a lot of different doors that would have gotten you in this room. You might be here, for the conspiracy stuff. You might be here for faith-based stuff. You might be here for politics or military intel. Like there's a lot of doorways you might have entered this room. But this idea, like the church was typically looked at as a place you went to and it was like you had to drop everything that was fun and go live this boring life. When you look at the level of spiritual awareness that takes place by evil, there's a group of people out there that worship, that pray, that fast, that take their religion and their faith much more seriously than most Christians. And if you never saw the footage of them, the opening of the CERN facility and that big tunnel that they had in Europe where this goat man comes out and this big dance that turns into like a, orgy kind of celebration, like these guys understand what they're about and what they're doing. And like their awareness of the spiritual level of what's happening is probably beyond that of most Christians in America anyway, that are on the behavior modification. I want a message that I can apply to my sales meeting on Monday, which is all good stuff. The Bible's full of wisdom. I love the book of Proverbs. But these people sacrifice, they worship, they fast. This isn't like, oh, somebody's a good person or a bad person. There is a spiritual war, and they celebrate, they dedicate these things. This parade here took place in front of the dignitaries that show up, the mayors and all this. It's all about a sacrifice to Moloch. And so this is taking place out in the open now, where it would have been something you hear about. Now that sounds like Old Testament stuff, or that didn't exist. There's probably more satanic open worship and Luciferian theology being shared in the world today than maybe at any point, in human history. I want to jump to another clip real quick, and this is going to be our launching pad into the conversation with you. I don't know that most people understand that there is an intentional plan to eliminate the majority of the people on this planet. If I was on an airplane and the pilot came on and said, hey, I love everybody on this plane, I think you're amazing, and I'm not going to personally do anything to harm you, but by the time this plane lands, about 2/3 of you need to be gone. And so we're going to work that out somehow. I'd be very nervous. And that is how the elites are talking about this planet that we're on right now. It's like, hey, a lot of you are going to have to go. I want to play a clip real quick, and then I want you to just run with this, because I don't know that people grab this. You think that's ridiculous. They couldn't mean that. That's not what they said. Watch this clip and ask yourself, why would anybody ever say these things out loud? These statements I'm getting ready to play you were not after a couple of drinks at a bar and they were joking. These are on stages, prepared presentations. These are well thought out ideas that they have been implementing since, at least openly and intentionally, since 1971. But let me play this clip, and then Jamie, I'm just going to like a cattle prod to a wild horse, just let you run with it after we play this, because you do the best job I've seen at grabbing this and actually having an explanation of anybody I've heard. So let's run this.
We cannot hide away from human population growth, because it underlies so many of the other problems. All these things we talk about wouldn't be a problem if there was the size of population that there was 500 years ago. My name is Jane Goodall. My age is 80. My job is giving people hope. If I just have this magic power, I would like to, without causing any pain or suffering, reduce the number of people on the planet.
The planet can support something like 1 billion people, maybe 2 billion, depending on how much liberty and how much material consumption you want to have. If you want more liberty and more consumption, you have to have fewer people. And conversely, you can have more people. I mean, we could even have 8 or 9 billion probably if we have a very strong dictatorship, which is smart. It's Unfortunately, you never have smart dictatorships. They're always stupid. But if you had a smart dictatorship and a low standard of living, you can have it. But we want to have freedom and we want to have a high sentence, so we're going to have 1 billion people. And we're now at 7, so we have to get back down. I hope that this can be slow, relatively slow, and that it can be done in a way which is relatively equal.
He's making because of very, very high medical costs and a lack of willingness to say, is spending $1 million on that last 3 months of life for that patient, would it be better not to lay off those 10 teachers and to make that trade-off in medical costs? But that's called the death panel, and you're not supposed to have that discussion.
Hey, Flyover family, we'll get right back into our conversation with Jamie. I know you're learning a lot and taking a ton of notes, but we try to use our platform here at the Flyover Conservative Podcast to answer some of the major questions that we are having personally and use our relationships and connections to help you with that. Your food, you got access to food without mRNA technology stuck into it, or made in a lab by Bill Gates. Your communications. We're going to get into more of that here with Jamie about why communications are important. Medical. You got a doctor that you can trust that's going to take care of you and answers to your best interests, not a government protocol. And then your money. We know that the dollar is being destroyed before our eyes. The BRICS nations are joining against it. It's just no longer going to be the global fiat currency. You need something that holds value against the dollar. Bullion silver is the best way to do that. And we've had a relationship with Dr. Kirk Elliott for over 25 years. His dad was a mentor to Stacy and I when we were first married. I trust him completely. My kids, my mother-in-law, everybody that I know, I've referred to him to help them take some of their money, get out of this and into something that is real and is going to hold its value and appreciate against this dollar. The good thing about physical silver in a bullion form, not a collectible Elvis Presley coin or something you have to sell to somebody because of a story, something you're buying for the spot price, not an inflated amount. Dr. Kirk, you don't pay commissions when you get out of it, and I can get out of my bullion in 48 hours and turn it into whatever I want in the future. It could be stocks, it could be a digital currency, it could be whatever. I can store it on hand or I can store it at an offsite location. But either way, a phone call in 45 minutes, in a day or two, 48 hours, and I could turn it back into whatever currency that I want in the future. And I cannot tell you how important that could be for all of us. Flyovergold.com simply gets you into his space. It's a landing page, answers questions, you put in your information, but they walk it through it like this. They set up a conversation to educate you on what your options are, not to sell you, not to twist your arm, just to help you make the best choice for you in your situation, whether it's cash, an IRA, retirement, whatever you want to turn from something fake and deflating into physical gold and silver. All right, let's jump back into our conversation with Jamie. Wow. Okay. So we could go on and on because there's a lot of versions of that, but these are set on presentations with PowerPoint slides and things to back them up. And it said, sweet, like, I love people. I don't want to harm anyone or cause any suffering, but about 2/3 of you are going to have to die.
Yeah. It's crazy when you actually look at it, and it's hard to understand the global elite and their mentality unless you understand occultism and the mystery schools. Now, that's not something that I would challenge anybody to go out and do a deep dive in unless the Lord's called you into it. But that's the only lens that you can understand this. And this goes back to, Phoenician, Sumerian, Canaanitic, Egyptological, Babylonian machinations of the elite, which actually is traced all the way back to the garden, right? Going back to Genesis 3, Genesis 6, and this literal cosmic warfare. I mean, you think about even, with the Exodus, God's saying that he came to judge the gods of Egypt, the Elohim, the lesser gods, the small g gods, and how the whole world lies in the evil one. And our fight's not against flesh and blood, but against this multidimensional cosmic warfare. And so when you understand the mystery schools, and in particular theosophy, which is even where Darwinian evolution came to. Darwinian evolution was specifically inserted to get us to the point of the Great Deception, with the advent of the ufology, soft disclosure stuff that Tucker Carlson and others are out there breaking all the time. But again, there is this interconnectivity to all of it. And what these elites believe, they actually believe that they're altruistic. They believe that it is their divine right of the gods. It's a Nimrodian hubris, right? It's this dialectical deception that they are responsible because of their genetic coding, which most of them say they have a triple strand helix, including the royal family in England. Currently,
Correct.
if you saw right before the Queen died, she lit on the front lawn of whatever thing there in England, a triple strand helix. You'll see that imagery everywhere. It's on all the medical stuff. And they say literally the serpent, a seraphim, a winged, fiery plumed serpent deity has intertwined their DNA. Therefore, it is their divine right, which is why you have all the intermarrying in the royal families throughout all of history to lead and guide humanity, because if they don't, they will destroy the earth. And so
let's pull that up while he's talking, that queen with the double string helix, because that's a pretty popular clip. If you've not seen that, people need to see it. Go ahead and keep going. I just want them to put that on the screen.
Yeah, and so they believe that in benevolence they are going to reduce the human population in perpetuity with what's beneficial. I mean, you wouldn't believe, most people wouldn't believe the quotes of these people. It's not done in secret. It's not done in hiding. They actually believe that is their role and responsibility to destroy humanity. It's a Faustian lie. It's a Faustian deal, right? It's the perpetual thing that they think they're going to get a seat at the new table, but they don't understand how Lucifer and the powers of darkness will work. When they're done using them to destroy the population, then they're going to chew them up and spit them out. And again, I always go back to the biblical worldview. So is there any credence to what they're saying? Absolutely. Why? Because I know the wrath of Satan listed throughout, for brevity's sake, the first half of the end times, or of the book of Revelation, is the wrath of Satan against humanity. And it says a third of the population, a third of the population, a fourth of the population, and a third of the population are destroyed. They are going to do what they have already told you they're going to do. So now you get understanding why Ukraine and why Russia and why the incessant push for nuclear war. They must have it. Now you understand why the thing that goes into people's bodies that's altering them and killing them all around the globe. And there's a time release bioweapon component to it that most people can't even conceive of yet. There's a reason why that was inserted when it was inserted. There's a reason why Starlink. There's a reason why Space Force. There's a reason why directed energy weapons. There's a reason for all. There's a reason why they're talking about the Great Reset. There's a reason why they're doing biometric identification and digital IDs and all these things all over the face of the earth, and why they're consolidating all economies. There's a reason why SWIFT is transferring and BRICS is transferring. Everything is interconnected, and it is for this end goal of now, like right now, like an immediacy and an imminency of a necessitated mass global depopulation. Why? Because of astrocatastrophism. That's the why that nobody's connecting. The why is the asteroid Apophis, which was discovered in 2004. I actually believe in the late 80s. And the effects that it's going to have, not just on the Earth, but on all of humanity, even with solar radiation and other things, on the very genetics of humanity. And this is the why. The why is because they ran simulations in 2018 and 2019 in New York about the effects of a limited asteroid impact on 1/3 of the Earth. That's interesting. The Bible says, and I saw great stars falling from the heavens, and 1/3 of the Earth was destroyed, and 1/3 of the trees were burned up, and 1/3 of the grass, and 1/3 of the fish, and 1/3 of the ships. That's interesting because the scientists are saying when this asteroid comes by, 1/3 of the Earth, wherever it's at on its axial tilt and rotation at the time, will be shot with a shotgun blast, for lack of a better word, that will destroy exactly 1/3 of the Earth, 1/3 of the population, 1/3 of our resources. They know that this thing is coming, and when they ran all these simulations, you guys can go read all the space agencies' data from all around the world and our U.S. government, and all this simulation happened right after Trump initiated Space Force. Then they ran these simulations in New York with all the think tanks and all the central planners of the world. Here was their conclusion, David. Their conclusion of the simulations of an asteroid impacting 1/3 of the Earth, or the effects of it impacting 1/3 of the Earth. You know, they talked about the volcanism and the tsunamis and the major city impacts. And the superheating of the atmosphere because of the thermal dynamics of this thing hitting in the water and blah, 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 and all these different things, and the famine and the third of the sun being darkened and a third of the moon being darkened by the debris that's thrown in there. This is all biblical language that they're using as central planners. Their conclusion was this: that asteroid was not the threat. The only threat is the human chaos factor. This was their conclusion on 3 different simulations. The human chaos factor was the greater threat than the asteroid itself. Therefore, we need I kid you not, global centralized government. We need a global centralized form of communications to keep disinformation and misinformation from getting out about the asteroid, even coming towards the Earth, and the effects of it after it happens. They said they needed a centralized currency because all the economies would collapse at a single time. They said they needed to centralize all forms of distribution, food distribution, and resource distribution. And because they could not control the human chaos factor, that they needed to drastically reduce the population before the asteroid comes. Just so people know, 2029. 2029 is they can track it with all their high-speed physics data, but here's the key thing. It will be visible in the sky to the naked eye in 2025. So what's interesting is they give the exact date and time. My notes are all mixed up all over my desk, but they give the exact date and time of when this will be visible and when the debris trail of the asteroid will go through the debris trail, which would be like that shotgun blast on the Earth. And it happens to be 3.5 years from the time that it's visible to the day, 3.5 years to when we would go through that thing. If anybody knows the midway point of the tribulation, happens to be 3.5 years, and all the effects of the seals and the trumpets, and even up into the bowls, judgments, if you read it, it reads as an ongoing astrological event, meteorological event that is impacting all of humanity, because God is doing his last great act to get humanity's attention so that they would look up. So now you understand why even Obadiah 4 says, though you set your nest among the stars, I will bring you down low. Now you understand why the movie Elysium, why the movie Oblivion, why the movie Greenland, why the movie Deep Impact, why the movie, The Matrix with Neo, Near Earth Object, right? Like, why are they spinning into oblivion? Why are they sterilizing into oblivion? Why are they getting ready to war us into oblivion? They need a limited nuclear exchange. And why are they consolidating every form of food production and altering at a genetic level? Why did they recently seal the doors on the survival seed vault in the ice of whatever? I can't remember the nation now. The Svalbard seed vault. Yeah. And they sealed the doors. Why are they building deep underground bases at breakneck speed? And yet the Bible says they will hide themselves in the earth, in the rocks, to hide themselves from the great and terrible day of the Lord. It says all the great men and all the mighty men and all the generals and all the leaders of the earth hide themselves in the rocks when these things coming. It's literally, again, all in the scriptures, and nobody's dealing with it. And that's the context with which they're operating out of.
Whew. That's a lot. Okay, couple of not just kind of like a housekeeping and frame this. If you're listening to this, we've had shows in the past where people have this theory of revelation and this interpretation of revelation. My goal here, and my goal with you, Jamie, is I want to pull as much from you of what you're seeing, but what about this, or correct, or any of this kind of thing. I brought 90% of my notes here, other than your name and website, were for me taking notes today, not all the things I want to try to convince you of and this kind of thing. I am willing personally to let go about anything for truth and what God is saying and what God is doing. My identity is not attached to, but I grew up and the flannel graph had this picture and it said this thing, I think we're at a point where everybody needs to humbly pursue truth and say, hey, the reality of what's going on. I want to walk through what you said just a little bit and maybe do a little vocabulary lesson, Jamie Walden style. So just a couple of words you threw out. NEO, near Earth object. So that's a thing that I think will probably come up more as we go through this. People understanding that what it's about. I'd like to dig in this, and Colton had it on the screen there. This Apophis asteroid. Is that the right? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, Apophis
Apophis
is the centrality of what's going on, and people can do like a perfect condensing of different random things I'm fire hosing you with right now. I didn't even get into the science of it. The science of it is fascinating to me because it perfectly validates literally scripture by scripture in the book of Revelation about what's going to happen. And then they tell you scientifically what this thing's going to do. It's verbatim. It's insane to break it down, but it's the Wormwood prophecy by Dr. Tom Horn. You can get it at Skywatch TV. It is a very well researched, documented, bibliographied out, thing where he systematically goes through what all the space agencies are saying, what all the science is saying, what all the whatever is saying about, in particular, Apophis. It's all centered on this Apophis. And what's interesting about Apophis is an ancient Egyptological deity who was the god of chaos and destruction and death and darkness and earthquakes. And the unique qualifier about Apophis is that you cannot stop it. There's no stopping it. So isn't it interesting that this asteroid that they locked onto, they named Apophis? Now, let's back up a little bit, David. This gets into Ronald Reagan's address to the United Nations Assembly in the 1980s. And it's a very, very particular address. Let me read, because this is when they locked onto it, and everything has changed since that time. Ronald Reagan's address to the UN General Assembly says, "In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us realize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly all of our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside of this world." He was saying, he was telling you, that was their broadcasting. Listen, all world leaders, we know what's coming. We know, start preparing in secret. If you remember, even in movies like Greenland, the most recent one with Gerard Butler, or Deep Impact from, I think that was maybe the early 90s and stuff like that. The whole thing in both those movies and several other ones is that all the world leaders and the central planners knew it was coming, and they were doing everything they could to prepare for it and even to deflect it. But they didn't tell the populace till they could see it, and they couldn't deny it anymore. If people remember, I think it's in my notes somewhere, but again, they're all mixed up. Was it last year or maybe a year and a half ago now, where it was a blip in the news cycle about them smashing that piece of satellite technology into a comet to see if they could deflect it? They're training for Apophis. They're literally sending up asteroid deflecting things. They're doing nuclear testing. They kind of like the movie Armageddon. They've brought in
Bruce Willis. Is that the Bruce Willis movie?
What's that?
Is that with Bruce Willis? What's
Bruce
his face?
Willis.
I forget who Ben, the accountant.
Affleck.
Ben Affleck. Yeah.
And so all that stuff they're doing in real time. So all that's predictive programming. This thing, they call them near Earth objects, or PHOs, potentially hazardous objects, is all centered around this Apophis. And it really is like something wicked this way comes. And this thing is 370 meters across and is traveling at 28,000 miles an hour. It's 20 million metric tons. But, there it is, the DART mission. Yeah, this was an attempt to redirect and deflect a space body for planetary defense. Most people don't know that we do have planetary defense systems, hence Space Force, space-based weapons platforms, and directed energy weapons. And it's not just the United States. There's an international effort to do everything as quick as they can to get it off Earth, because they know what's coming, and enter in the global depopulation agenda and global governance and the consolidation of all aspects of human experience, and enter in all the biometric data stuff and all the whatever, and even the alteration of your genetics and of the atmosphere and of the earth and of everything, because they know it's all about ready to be altered anyways. And they're trying to get ahead of it for humanity 2.0, for the next evolutionary process of the human species. So these freak shows actually believe they're doing you a favor by mass murdering your babies in the womb and sterilizing you. They actually believe that they're doing the whole of humanity a benefit. That's how wickedly deceived they are through all their occultic practices.
Is it a mindset like, a horse breaks its leg, the humane thing would be to put it down? Is it that kind of an idea? Like, evil people, I don't know that most evil people think they're evil.
No, they don't. They think they're altruistic. They have this, this perverse understanding of their role. Again, I said Nimrodian hubris earlier.
Does that go back to Nimrod? I wrote that down. Nimrodian hubris. I wrote that down.
Yeah. Yeah. And who's Nimrod? Oh, Nimrod became Gibberine. Nimrod became Nephilim. Nimrod, as most people's translations say, was a great hunter before God. He was the first transhumanist. That's why they worship Nimrod. What is the obelisk in DC? It's literally the phallic symbol. I'll just get straight gangster on you. It's the boner of Nimrod. What's the Eiffel Tower? The boner of Nimrod. What's going on in the Vatican? It's the boner of Nimrod. Every state capital in America is a dome-shaped building across from an obelisk. It is the occultic practice, and they're saying that is where we're going to get, because Nimrod became like God, the original lie from the Garden of Eden, and that's what they all worship. All Freemasons, all the Order of the Orient, all Illuminists, all these other lesser things. This is what they're doing at Bohemian Grove. This is what they're doing in D.C. Why is it called the District of Columbia? Who's Columbia? Nobody asked that. Who's Columbia? Why do we have the largest Egyptological monument on the face of the earth that's 666 feet and 66 inches in height, standing across from the most giant dome-shaped building with a reflecting pool? As above, so below. It's all Luciferian worship, occultism, right in our faces. From the Vatican to D.C. and every other major capital in the world. So these guys, this is who they're beholden to. This is why they do what they do. And like Freemasons, when they get to the 32nd and 33 degree level of Freemasonry, they, quote unquote, come to the revelation that Lucifer was misunderstood. He's the one true God, and it's the Promethean fire, the Promethean deception, that he's trying to give humanity knowledge and understanding and usher them into the evolutionary process that they can be like God. And if you'll just worship him, he'll help lead you into that. That's what all these guys believe. All of them believe it. This is what's in Hollywood imagery and every single movie. This is what's in Transformers and Captain America and the X-Men movies and above. It's literally everywhere. Everywhere. Disney movie called Genesis 6. I mean, it's in every single aspect of our pop culture, and nobody even knows what they're looking at.
We could do a whole show deep dive just on how much of Washington, D.C., the capital of our country, is this the symbology in the city itself. It really should be just like scraped clean, like a cancerous wound on the body and removed. I mean, if our country is going to ever be what we claim it is, we've got to break ties with this kind of, like, I wouldn't let that in my yard. I wouldn't have that in my house, for sure. I wouldn't want any kind of connection with those kind of things anywhere in my world.
Yeah, it would have to be like the days of Josiah, where it says he tore down every high place. He tore down every altar. He smashed the stones and pulverized them in the dust. They tore it all down to restore righteousness. And most people don't understand that, believe me, I have a degree in history. So like I'm a historian by formal training. So I understand the classically taught, ideologies of the founding of America, but it's just not true. When you study the Sir Francis Bacon and Adam Weishaupt in the 1600s and what they saw America as was the new Atlantis. They actually believed this was the foundings of America at the origin, that this would be the place where the Atlantean age, the return of the golden age of gods, the men of renown, the return of the gods of old would occur on this land. America is Amaruka, is the original word that was given for America, which means land of the winged plume serpent. Who's the winged plume serpent? That's the Nakash, that's the Seraphim, that's the Garden of Eden. That is the winged fiery plume serpent. And when you think about it, go from Quetzalcoatl to Chinese dynastic, things to the Shintoism, they're all worshiping a winged fiery plume serpent. What's on the crown of the elongated skull covering of the Egyptological pharaohs is a winged serpent. Is center stage in every iconography everywhere, because that's who they're worshiping. And actually, that's what America was founded to be by the mystery school adepts of Europe fleeing their quote unquote religious persecution, was that this Amaruca would be the place, because of the mounds all over, because of the mounds of the giants and the mounds of whatever, because of what the Native Americans were telling them was going on here, because of the Egyptological artifacts in the Grand Canyon. Go study the Grand Canyon. Go look at the name of every monument in the Grand Canyon. It's only Egyptological, because of the Canaanitic boats and the giants' bones found all over the Upper Peninsula in Michigan, because of all this crazy stuff, the Cahokia Mounds in Illinois and the Serpent Mounds in Ohio, and all the city of angels. The city of what angels? How about the fallen angels? How about the insurrectionary angels? From coast to coast, this land was pre-consecrated for one singular purpose. The mystery school adepts knew that, and they came here fleeing religious persecution to reestablish that. That's why 13 colonies, 13 tail feathers on the phoenix, not an eagle, the 13 arrows. That's why there's 33 stones on the pyramid with the all-seeing eye of Lucifer, and it's not finished. And it is their goal, Novus Ordo Seclorum, to bring about the new order of the ages. Their new order is actually a return to the old order. It's the return of the golden age of the gods. That's what our elites believe. That's why they practice the raising of Osiris ceremony at every presidential inauguration since George Washington. The Scottish Rite Freemasons have performed the rising of Osiris ceremony as he's being inaugurated. What's the right? Who's Osiris? That's Horus. That's Zeus. That's Apollo. That's Apollyon. It's Nimrod. Literally the resurrected Nimrod. Now, don't even get me started on the Antichrist, because all of this is related to all the attributes of the Antichrist that they're in worshiping in perpetuity and preparing for. They prepare more for the, resurrection of the Antichrist more than Christians are preparing for the second coming of Jesus Christ. It's insane.
Okay. I don't know if there's a little blood trickle out of my ear or something here. There's just my little brain is just working on hyperdrive. Matter of fact, my head's feeling warm. Okay, I gotta jump back a couple of things here. Canaanitic mounds. Okay, so you're referencing. Let's talk about Canaan. Let's talk about the 12 spies, what they saw, and the connection there. Because I'm assuming that's what you're referencing. So
yes.
So I mean, I'm sure that could be an episode, but like for the listeners, especially, Christians, that here's an encouraging thing on like a side note addendum I'll pin to the side. One thing I've found I said we do these ReAwaken America events that we've been at. There's probably 6,000 to 10,000 people at each of them, and Flyover Conservatives hosts a meet and greet on one night. 'Cause I just like people getting together and connecting and meeting each other. You should go home with like resources. Hey, who's in my area? Who can we actually do something with? And so we host these meet and greets. I started noticing about 7-8 months ago, this common theme. Now I ask for it. I fish it out. I have more people that have been in the church for 20, 25 years, 30 years. And they're telling me this, since COVID lockdowns, my church shut down, this and that. I'm actually reading the Bible at home on my own for the first time in my life. These are people that have been in the church for 30 years. They've never read their Bible at home on their own. The pastor puts up 3 verses each week, and it's a life lesson, and they move forward. So for people that you're a person of faith, some version of that on the spectrum. These things we talks about, like this Canaanitic mounds, this is biblical. These are things that go back. And so talk a little bit about when you say a Canaanitic mound, what actually did they see when they went into there and they came back and said, we're like grasshoppers among these guys? And the kind of creatures, because when you see this stuff, I love, like, I don't know, it's usually when I'm in a hotel, I'll turn on a TV and you go through on the History Channel and it'll be like, oh, skinwalkers, you know, or something, you know, going on. I'm like, this is fascinating. And this stuff sounds a lot like what you would read in the Old Testament. And we kind of skip over that stuff and kind of focus mostly on, you know, the 10 Commandments or this or something, you know, that's a good story. But this manipulation of human DNA and these non-human like beings in creatures have been around from the jump, pretty much, you know, from the beginning. So dig into that just a little bit, because I want people to grab that, especially if you're a person of faith and you don't even know what's in the Bible.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, you know, you'll hear, I mean, it's so crazy how ill-equipped the church is because of the narcissists, you know, puppeteers in the pulpits, right? Doing their emotionally predatory heartstring pulls every Sunday so that they can build their capital campaigns for their next student center. It's insane, right? Like, why don't we know these things? So, like, if you don't understand Genesis, you can't understand any of it. Not that you can't be in the faith, and not that you can't be glad for the forgiveness of sins, but actually the gospel was in response to the insurrection. Even God creating humanity was in response to the insurrection that occurred before even human creation. Genesis 1:1, the world was tohu and bohu in the Hebrew, right? Without form and void. And the Lord stood over the waters of the deep. That's how most people read it. It's the world was without form and void, and the Lord stood over the chaos dragon, over the Leviathan. It was forced into this formless void because of the insurrection, and even humanity and even faith. This is why faith is such a big deal. Having not seen God, they believe him, right? And the dust of the earth, he breathed life into him. He says, they will choose to worship me, having not seen me. You, third, saw me in full, knew me in full, and you went into open rebellion against me. Watch this. He said, the whole earth lies in you can have the whole earth. All the nations are given over to the powers of darkness. He goes, I'll take this sliver and watch what I'll do with this. Oh, you want to show up in the tree of knowledge of good and evil and make it look like it's burning? Seraphim, Nakash in the garden. I'll use a bush, you jokers. You want to do this? I'll do that. Everything God is doing is tit for tat all the way through Christ Jesus. He was crucified at what most people say is Calvary, right? Or Golgotha. What's Golgotha? The place of the skull. The place of what skull? The skull of the Nephilimic freak show giant that David cut his head off. Christ is literally asserting his dominion over those guys that rebelled. He said, on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail. Where was he at? Caesarea Philippi. What was he in the shadow of? Mount Hermon. What was going on at Mount Hermon? That's where a third of the angels descended to make war against God by corrupting humanity. Jesus said this, like everything was an assertion. When Jesus told the waves and the wind, peace, be still, and they obeyed his command, that goes back to Genesis 1:1 about the chaos over the deep. Anytime when it talks about the fomenting and the raging of the waves, it's talking about the rebellion, their rebellion. And that's why it says in the book of Revelation, and the oceans and the seas will be no more. The rebellion's done, finally, once and forever. So everything that's going on in scriptures is this tit for tat, including the usurpation of genetics, because they knew that the gospel and the salvation and the restoration, the redemption of humanity was going to come through the seed of the woman, through the genetic offspring of humanity created in God's image. They didn't know how, they didn't know when, they didn't know what. So scorched earth policy, burn it all down, corrupt it all. God just said that our fate is sealed, just corrupt it all. So this gets into why when the Israelites went into the land of Canaan, he said, kill every man, woman, child, and animal. See, and this is why Christians have a stumbling block. This is why unbelievers have a stumbling block. Oh, if God was good, why would he do that? If God was good, why would he do that?
Right.
They don't understand what was going on in the land of Canaan. And when he said, do not take wives from among yourselves, do not intermingle the holy race. Don't do it, because it wasn't just a normal marrying somebody from another tribe or another race or another ethnicity. It was about this genetic war. And so what you have is when Joshua and the 12 spies went into the land of Canaan, and actually Israel started dispossessing the land, these things, these hybridized entities, this is where you get all your Greek, Roman, Babylonian mythology, all your demigods, all your half god, half man. It wasn't myth. That was their world. It was their world. It's in every hieroglyph, every pictograph, every geoglyph. They're telling you what was a part of the reality. And as they went in, they actually dispersed these guys all over the face of the earth. This is why you have a global collective consciousness, a global technology, pyramids on every continent, interconnected through different even energies in the atmosphere that they knew and understood at the time, high technologies that we are only now rediscovering, including internet or nuclear weapons. There's a vitrification and aspects, even in the Vedic text in Sanskrit, of nuclear wars that are occurring way before time. You know, you have even as recently as the Roman legionnaires having discussions about having to fight battles against men that were 20 to 30 feet tall and had aerial vehicles that shot fire at them. They're discussing literally directed energy weapons that Roman legionnaires would go into remote areas as they're expanding the Roman Empire that they were still having to conquer. All the way up into the current age, we have reports coming out of Afghanistan of Marines hitting certain cave complexes and running into 28-foot tall guys that are ripping half the platoon apart by hand before they take them down. And then the body's put on heavy lift military aircraft and never heard of again, right? And so what you have is when Joshua and Caleb and 12 spies and Israel went into Canaan, they dispossessed. So you have Sardinia and Malta and, you know, through the Levant and everywhere else, including North America, with the mounds, with all the mound builders, the Canaanic stuff, with pyramids. Even here in Salida, Colorado, I'm in Colorado, there is a pyramid right smack in the middle of the town that they can't even decipher how old it is. Egyptological artifacts, Canaanitic artifacts and boats up in the Great Lakes, because when they entered into the Promised Land, they dispersed those guys all over, and then they created this. Every place you go on the face of the earth has the exact same technology, exact same architecture, and the exact same paganism, the exact same deities being depicted in all their iconography, everywhere on the face of the earth at the exact same time. And it was right when they entered the land of Canaan.
Boom. You know, it's amazing some of the pyramids that they think are just a big pile of dirt or a hill now that they're uncovering. You've seen these pictures, like this is what it looked like in like 1912, and now it's today, and it's like all uncovered. Yeah. It's like those are like the biggest pyramid in the world. Yeah, I'm sure Colton can pull up a slew of these. One of the biggest ones in the world is in Mexico, and they thought it was just a mountain until recently, and it's actually a pyramid. And so like the idea that Darwin brought into the conversation, that pretty much everything before like 5 minutes ago was a bunch of like knuckle dragging cavemen that were primitive and couldn't talk, you know, that were impressed to have discovered fire accidentally. Like these kind of ideas were injected into our educational system very intentionally, because it sort of turns off that part of your brain, kind of like the Truman Show with Jim Carrey. You know, it's like they don't want you to even think about ever leaving the island. So every picture is like of a plane crashing, or, you know, when you go to the travel agency, it's like you're influenced and gaslit in a way that you can't even allow your mind to even think about what might have been, you know, before, because we're always at the height of civilization. We're always at the front car of a long train, and everything before you was just cavemen. But that doesn't play out when you actually look at the earth.
No, it doesn't. What's interesting about Darwin is if you really dig in deep, is where Darwin got his idea is now I can't remember who it is off the top of my head, but his grandfather and another well-known thinker, occultic thinker, his grandfather and them were best friends. So as a kid, he grew up listening to it. I think it might have been Blavatsky's, maybe Madame Blavatsky's, who was a originator of theosophy, which is what all modern Luciferianism and communism is rooted in, theosophy. Everything in our corporal reality is based on theosophy. That's where it came from. And even the insertion of the evolutionary process of the species was they knew, because of whatever they're tapping into, that it had nothing to do with, men evolved from apes, but it was to get us to this point in humanity where you could conceive, and this gets into ufology, the ET, ideology, the return of the golden age of gods, and all transhumanism was Darwin had to start that then to slowly do the soft sell to humanity now, to where with the biotech interface and the return of the golden age of the gods, that you could conceive and actually long for and take into yourself aspects that will alter you, because it's just a part of the evolutionary, it's self-directed evolution of the species to solidify in your mind that you can be like a god. You can be like God. And this is what all the ET stuff is getting ready to do. This is what Mormons are preparing the way for. The Vatican's preparing the way for. Excellent book out there called Exo Vaticana, preparing the way where they go through everything that's being taught at the Vatican Seminary.
Can you spell that?
It's exo like extraterrestrial.
Okay.
Vaticana. And that goes into the most insane detail of Guy Cosmologno and all these other thinkers at the Vatican, how they are talking about baptizing their space brothers, the return of the golden age of the gods, the return of these guys. The Pope has said it will require rewriting of the Gospels when they allow humanity to understand that they've been in contact with these guys from the beginning of time, but humanity hasn't been ready for it. But the Vatican now feels that the Catholic Church, which is 2 billion people worldwide, can receive that knowledge, that it's time for them to evolve to where God wants them to be, which is to be more like God. I kid you not, the original lie from the Garden of Eden is what they're publicly teaching at Vatican Seminary. And so again, it's all interconnected. I can't, from the baseline stuff that we can see, World War III and today's emergency alert, whatever thing that they're going to do for nuclear war, to astrocatastrophism, to global economics, to transhumanism, to the hyper spiritualism that is getting ready to come. Or even
the transgender movement. This idea couldn't even be people wrap their head around it if they didn't think like, hey, I can do anything I want with this. I can manipulate it, change it, become. If a man become a woman and vice versa, then a man can become a god. This is just a vehicle that you're in, and you can make it anything you want.
Well, notice, David, the Baphomet, right? The icon of all modern Satanism is androgynous. It's a tranny. So transgenderism is occultism. Again, most people don't understand that. When you look at some of the highest wicked deities in the Greek and Roman pantheons, they were trannies. They were transgender. When you look at some of the deceptions of the demigods throughout mythology, it was because the certain gods could transition at will, or they had the plumbing for both things, and so they could rightly deceive, either way. And so again, even the transgenderism isn't organic. Nothing about it is organic. It's all rooted in where they're taking us. They're taking us somewhere very particular, and they have been working for several thousand years to get there.
Okay, let's start. We got all these pieces on the table. Let's kind of start organizing all these Legos, for a second here. So, all right, is Satan a real thing? Is Lucifer a real thing, a real entity, a real person, a real thing? Not person.
He's a very, very physical entity. In fact, it says that he was perfect in all of his ways. The fullness of wisdom, the fullness of beauty. There's all these different attributes in him, until iniquity was found in him. So he is a particular being. The reason why the occultists use the word Lucifer is because they won't use the word Satan. Actually, Satanists are used as a joke by the true occultists. The modern Satanists, the black lipstick wearing emo freak show arm cutting jokers, those guys are the laughing stock to the true occultists. They worship Lucifer, not Satan, because Lucifer was his pre-fallen identification. Okay. And so he's very real. He is a cherubim, not a seraphim. Very particular distinction to make, because there's too many things. Like when people say, yeah, when Satan deceived Eve in the Garden of Eden, I'm like, it wasn't Satan in the Garden of Eden. It was a Nakash, and it was a seraphim. Lucifer himself is a cherubim, completely different species and genus of celestial beings that God created. And again, that gets into, there's all kinds of things going on in the heavenlies that we don't fully understand. But you read Ezekiel and Ezekiel's wheel and the creature standing around the throne and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so look at all that iconography, right? And then go look at Egyptological hieroglyphs. The same things being described in Ezekiel are the same things that they're physically worshiping and giving things to and giving their children to. Because a third of those things rebelled and came and walked around men and led men for thousands of years.
Something that's kind of really disturbing to me a lot, you see on social media, this versions of this idea of there's a meme I've seen where it's like Jesus like this and like some cartoon version of Satan, and they're arm wrestling, and it's like kind of a thing. I'm like, there's always this. I was trying to be depicted as this. There's this battle between good and evil that it's like God versus the devil, and it's like torn back, like it's this tug of war thing, and like God's putting everything he can into it, and Satan's putting everything he can into it, and you don't know who's gonna win. It's like it makes me sick.
Yeah, it's such a joke, dude. I mean, you think of Psalm 2, right? Think of Psalm 2, David. It says, they set themselves up against the Lord and his anointed, saying, we'll break his bonds asunder. We'll never have this man rule over, right? So it's talking about the cosmic rebellion raging in the face of God and against his son, Jesus Christ, right? And he speaks to it so like it's nobody. And then he says this. So they're doing all this. Think of the Armageddon. They raise their weapons skyward. There's a reason why they're doing planetary defense. One of it is the asteroid. The second one is they all know Christ is returning in the clouds, and they're literally putting directed energy weapons up to confront Christ. Listen to what they say. They'll tell you. You can read this. This is OSINT, open source intelligence. They will tell you, the occultists will tell you, the global elite, they know Christ is coming, but they're so hubristic they believe they can win. But anyways, back to Psalm 2. So they're doing all this for eons, even off-earth weapon systems to confront Christ. And it says God terrifies them in this. He mocks and scoffs them. He scoffs and laughs. And then he terrifies them in his wrath, saying, I've installed my son on Zion, my holy hill. So God's response, there is no wrestling match like that image shows. God's response is this, David. He goes, ha! That's it. That's his response. Like, do your worst. Like, do your worst, powers of darkness, through humanity. He laughs, and it's such a non-issue. And look at when Jesus returns on the white horse, whose name is Faithful and True. He rides out in justice and judgment to make war. His robe is drenched in blood. Christ is not going to look like the way the church has trained you he looks like when you see him next. He is Messiah and David, the conquering king, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, riding out to make war. And all he does is show up and open his mouth, and it's over. There's no battle. There's no battle. He just opens his mouth. It says, I disarmed them, vanquishing them at the cross. I made a public spectacle of them. I conquered it. He went to Sheol to preach to the captives. He literally went to preach to angels that are reserved in chains in the earth. Here we go, hollow earth, right? The Bible literally describes everything. Everything about our world is in the scriptures. But the pathetic, skinny jean wearing, black rimmed, pacified pansy pastors are say nothings and do nothings. These effeminate, oh man, don't even get me going. Like, they won't equip the saints to be radiant in Christ Jesus, to have a knowing of their God, to go forth and do daring feats of valor. They're training to be a bunch of pansy pacifists, guys that acquiesce every aspect of the reality to the matriarchal feminists of the world so that they can drink beer and play golf after church is over and talk really cool and tough because they watched MMA once in their lives. Like, what a joke, dude. Put your money where your mouth's at, bro.
So let's keep packing. So Satan's real. Lucifer, this like this entity, and at work in thousands of years effort to manipulate the gene pool of what God created. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, it's scorched earth policy.
And so, and ultimately, would you say that this being he's not necessarily like, he's not pro Pride Month. He's not pro abortion. He's not for anything. He's just against God and whatever he can do to destroy what God's created, and try to, and every day wakes up, how can I give God the finger somehow?
Yeah, anything. And then again, remember, it comes through deception. It's not a boot on your neck. It says they masquerade as ministers of righteousness. So look at all the woke tards who believe that they're being righteous with all their BLM, Antifa, social justice, progressivism. Look at all the pastors who think they're
Sure.
righteous by being tolerant of everything and never speaking against anything. They're masquerading. It's a masquerade, right? It's a deception.
A
And
great
so
deception.
then now you fast forward to the great deception. These are lesser deceptions. It's the deception that a baby's not a baby, and therefore you should kill it so that you can have career advancement in your life, women. So that because you should be validated, and that's good. And what's good for you is to be validated by all people at all times. See, it's masquerading as righteousness, I've never met a woman who's had an abortion that is not riddled with shame, and self-loathing and regret. Not one. I don't care if they're out there marching, shouting their abortions. Those ones are totally given over. But the women who were deceived into doing it, they didn't have the fullness of understanding, and their hearts are broken now as they gain some insight over the years in their life about these things. They were deceived into taking the life of an innocent child that they didn't know and understand they were doing because the culture and the deception told them that it was okay. And probably a Christian counselor told them that it was okay. Probably.
And ultimately, the Bible has the answers for healing and forgiveness and removing of that. But a lot of times the church won't even mention the topic because they don't want to offend anybody that's had one.
No, they don't want to offend them. And I go,
So they actually remove all the solutions.
Yep. And instead of being like, praise God for the forgiveness of sins, and that the blood of Christ speaks a better word than the blood of Abel, and that the Lord will, he'll redeem the blood of the innocent. About instead of washing over them and taking the shame off of them, see, because then Satan not only got the child, Satan not only got the finger in the eye of God in his most precious creation, then he gets the woman with the shame, then he gets multiple generations. Again, this is asymmetric warfare one-on-one. It's asymmetric warfare. It's coming at you it's psychological warfare, it's signals warfare, it's kinetic warfare at times when it needs to be, it's dialectical deception, it's warfare. It's only ever war at every single aspect of our waking moments. It's warfare against humanity because Lucifer is making war against God. He hates that people worship and love and acknowledge God. Hates it. He hates the image of God. He hates everything. He hates anything good because there's nothing good apart from God. He hates any good. He hates it when you forgive somebody. He hates it when you show kindness. He hates it when you die to self and you set aside yourself in meekness and you go serve somebody. He hates it when you wash somebody else's feet. He hates it when you have joy. He hates all of it because it's all a testifying to who God is. He hates creation because it says creation testifies to who God is, Romans 1. So destroy creation. But use it as I didn't even break into this. The whole global warming movement is because of Apophis. The entire global warming deception is because of the astrocatastrophism that they know is coming. And they need a cover story for the earth changes that are occurring at rapid pace so that you will not turn towards God, but you'll actually make more war against humanity. It's deception. They'll go all the earth changes in the hydro conveyor and in the atmospheric, rivers and these things changing, blah, blah, blah. And even all their geoengineering is in their constant global warming language is a cover for the reality of what's getting ready to come and the things that are going to happen. So you won't look up and repent, but you'll actually double down and actually try to slaughter more humans and enslave more humans and tyrannical more humans. It's crazy, dude, how big it is. It's huge.
And I'm going to keep coming back to this Apophis. So Lucifer, destroying the gene pool. What would be his end game goal? Would it be zero humans left? Would it be just there's a bunch of them, but they're all mutated into some Neuralink zombies walking around that can no longer even have the ability to recognize God? Because this idea from the very beginning of faith, I recognize this unseen God that I've not seen, but I acknowledge him. Like there's a part of me that has the ability to do that maybe gets numbed out with drugs or TV and distractions and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So eventually just a bunch of people that all got like a chip planted and they've given up all rights to even have the ability to acknowledge God, but they kind of still walking around procreating just as a disgrace to what God made? Would that be a win? Like, what's his win? And we're going to jump right back into our conversation with Jamie. But if you're watching this, you're probably watching it on a phone or a mobile device. You probably have a cell phone. I almost guarantee it. Are you in favor of the tens of millions of dollars that your cell phone provider is probably paying towards causes that you're not in favor of? Have you ever looked it up? What all are they supporting? There's an alternative I didn't even know about until recently, and that's Patriot Mobile. Dan Bongino, Glenn Beck, a lot of people have been recommending them for quite a while, and we took a deep dive and have been blown away. They actually donate proceeds to pro-life causes, to NRA, to Turning Point USA, veterans causes, things that I know that we as a family really believe in. And I'm spending the same money I was before, but I'm reallocating those funds to a company that I know stands with us on these biggest issues. You can go to patriotmobile.com/flyover, patriotmobile.com/flyover, or call 972-PATRIOT. They have people right here in the United States that can take your call, that'll walk you through how to transfer. They can buy out your existing contract. There's a free activation fee when you tell them that you listen to the Flyover Conservative podcast. Just tell them the word flyover, and they can help take care of transitioning from a service that you may not be too excited about to something that is supporting causes that you do believe in without sacrificing anything. Same phones, same towers, different result. Let's get back to conversation with Jamie.
Yeah, his win is self-glorification and self-worship. So as man was created in the image of God, to be to create a kingdom of priests for himself, that he would be fully known and fully glorified, and that we would turn and worship him and delight in him and all these things. It's a counterfeit, right? It's anti-Christ. It's in place of Christ. So everything will be a counterfeit. So what he desires is to kill the useless eaters, to offend God and to affront God, but also simultaneously create man in his image, and that they would fully know and glorify and worship him. So it's pride 101. It's just old school hubristic pride. And so it's a replacement thing. So even if people dig deep into ufology and the abduction phenomenon and blah, 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 the hybrid programs, right? There's all this crazy stuff going on right now in real time. When you look at it, what they're doing is they're trying to replace the genetic created order of humanity with a hybridized thing. And that gets into a whole nother can of worms, the hybridizing of even human animal chimeric hybrids.
That's all Egypt's full of that.
World. All in the ancient world. They were real. There was whole legions of the dog-headed, they call them cynocephaly, I think they call them. And this Ophidian worship, so these reptilians and these dog-headed things and these eagle things, blah, blah, like it was real. It's not myth. And it says, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall be the coming of the Son of Man. As it was in the days of Lot, so shall be the coming of the Son of Man. You have to know and understand what was going on in those days, why God flooded the whole earth. It said all flesh was corrupted in those days. All flesh? Well, in Hebraic idioms, that's understood to mean genetic wholeness. All flesh. That means plants, animals, birds, humanity, as much as they could. And so, again, it goes back to that scorched earth policy. So even the story of the ark and the antediluvian age and the flooding of the earth and the deluge is so much bigger than what people realize. And actually, it testifies to God's love to fulfill the covenantal promise that he began with. He didn't contract with humanity. He covenanted with humanity. That's a whole different ball of wax.
Okay, man. Just so you know, I've had a great time. In case I forget to tell you later. All right. All right. So moving forward with this. So there's there, and that's his goal. Now, of all the things we know, see, touch, what all did Lucifer create?
Lucifer has no power to create. He only has the power to pervert.
So these asteroids that are out in space that are moving, he just observed it like the same as the Pope with his telescopes. Maybe that's why. Is that why the Catholic Church owns all the telescopes? Is that the thing? Because they're kind of looking for all this.
And do you know what the name of the telescope is? The largest binocular infrared telescope in the world.
Is it Lucifer?
It's the Lucifer device on
I've
Mount
heard of
Graham
that.
in Arizona. Yeah. It's
Wow.
called the Lucifer device on Mount Graham in Arizona. Why? Because Lucifer means the bearer of light. What is the Statue of Liberty? The Statue of Liberty is the statue of Lucifer, the light bearer, shining over all the United and all the points under crown and blah blah blah. It's Inanna, right? And it's the feminine aspect of Lucifer, literally claiming all of the United States of America for Lucifer with bearing the light bearer. Look at Columbia Pictures. It's the same. It's everywhere. It's everywhere in our body. Most people don't know what they're looking at. So,
Man.
and I mean, look at Paramount Pictures. Listen to this. Most people, Paramount Pictures is a mountain where the stars fall from the sky, a particular number of stars, and they surround the mountain. That's Mount Hermon. And behold, I saw stars falling from the heaven. That's the fallen angels coming and taking their dominion. It's everywhere, everywhere. Nobody knows what they're looking at.
And you know, so listeners, we're gonna eventually land this plane here in a place that's like, okay, what do you do and what's going on? All right, so that's man, there's so much symbology everywhere, and you can do endless episodes on these things, and it gets a bummer. 2.5 years ago, we started this podcast, and I thought I was pretty aware. I was a reader. I had a library of over 3,500 books. I loved reading and studying, and I thought I was kind of like kind of had a grasp on things. I was like a 2-year-old dog, compared to like actually knowing anything. I had this, Lee Greenwood playing in the background version of, American. And I think there's still probably a lot of that's really, really valuable, but we do have to be aware of these symbols and what's been put out there. So these pieces moving forward. So he didn't create these asteroids. That this is not Satan's attempt to mess up what God did. It's something that's just happening out there, and he's adjusting and adapting to it here on Earth. And, you look at the fact checkers, if you can hide the idea that hydroxychloroquine is helpful. My friend, Dr. Eric Naputi, was sued for $500 billion by the U.S. government. He just won his case. He was sued for $500 billion for promoting vitamin D, vitamin C, and helpful tips to beef up your immune system during COVID. He was just one of the first ones to do it, and he was really popular on Facebook. And so they sued him for $500 billion for that. So it's like, if they can cover up the fact that losing a few pounds, vitamin C, vitamin D is good for you, fresh air is good for you during a virus, if they can fool the world into that, I mean, they could probably do about anything.
They can do about it. And so when we talk about the great deception, I mean, what you're talking about even brings to mind the Manhattan Project with Oppenheimer, and 40,000 people living in the middle of the New Mexico desert, developing nuclear weapons and detonating nuclear weapons, and nobody knew. Not one person, the plumbers, the electricians, the sanitation department, the wives, the kids, the blah, blah, the guys delivering stuff, the construction workers, and what, not one person leaked. So much so that after they detonated nuclear weapons in the middle of America, in the desert, with 40,000 people, that the president himself had to be read into the program. You don't think they can hide? You don't think they can cover stuff up? Are you kidding me? When people go, 9/11, oh, simple, like if the government could never do that. They could never keep that a secret and hide that. I'm like, oh my goodness, you don't know governments then. They absolutely have the capability to do that. And especially now with technology, with the widespread advent of technology and all the AI algorithms and threat fusion centers and quantum computing and D-Wave stuff, not only can they do that, now they can do it more effectively than ever before because they can control the metadata of your reality, where you will never know what's up, what's down, what's left, what's right, what's whatever, because of the manipulation of your entire reality, right? And so that's why the truth, you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. It's like the truth is at the root of freedom. Truth is in freedom, and that's freedom eternal in Christ. Christ is the way, the truth, and the light. So when you know the truth, Jesus Christ, you even have freedom from sins. You have freedom from the curse of death and of the fall and of all these things. You have freedom from the shame and the condemnation, the guilt, because you know the truth of Jesus Christ and the sufficiency of his blood and his life and the power of his resurrection over you. You know that truth, you're free. You're good to go, bro. Right? So like this is the reality of how significant it is. And we didn't even get into emerging technologies. Now, when you talk about ELF waveform and EMF stuff and voice of God technology or voice to skull technology or Project Bluebeam, right? These holographic deception programs that have been in place for a long time with, this intersection of space-based and terrestrial-based, holographic projections and what people can't conceive of what they're able to do. They can't even conceive of it. Hence why it will be a great deception.
So we're talking about asteroids coming to the Earth that are in space now. The average person with a store-bought telescope, even with that, could not see, identify, recognize this.
Yet.
And then
right
you're
now.
saying it's at a pace that it'll be in our visible range in 2025.
2025 is when they're saying it'll be in our visible range and then actually pass by in 2029. There's particular dates. Sorry, I can't find them right now. And what's interesting about that, just to tell your listeners, this is not an earth-ending event. Anybody who talks about some earth-destroying thing or shown in Hollywood or the movie 2021 with John Cusack and all that, that's not true because it's not biblical. Now, an earth-altering event is absolutely, and I think the distinction that you're making, David, is that you have the wrath of Satan on humanity, and then this celestial stuff is the wrath of God on the wickedness and on the earth. So you have two different things that are occurring at the end of the age. You have the wrath of Satan against humanity, knowing that he has a short time, and that plays out for a little bit, and then God goes, "Are you done yet? Okay, now my turn. Enter in the breaking of the seals," right? And a great mountain of fire thrown into the sea, and then stars falling from the high, falling from the heavens like figs ripen, falling to the earth, and a third of the grass, a third of trees, a third of ships, a third of humanity. Great pestilence. Do the research on what comes with these space bodies and the debris and the particulates. Men being scorched from heat. Do studies on the thermal dynamics of one of these space bodies at that speed and that heat impacting the ocean and creating a greenhouse effect over the face of the earth with steam, and then blocking out a third of the sunlight and a third of the moonlight, and then creating famine because of the death of the plant life, which you kill plant life, then you kill animal life, then you kill our ability to eat, right? So it's actually all related to this singular event, which the asteroid is the last attempt of God to get the attention of humanity for love's sake, that they would repent. He says, at that time, I'm going to shake not only the heavens, I'm not going to shake not only the earth, but also the heavens and the earth, so that people might look up. What's the Netflix movie that recently came out? Don't Look Up. Don't Look Up. And it's about an impending asteroid that all the presidential cabinet knows about. And they create a mass media campaign to convince you to not look up. And they actually create a mass media campaign with people marching like all the Antifa reprobates, shouting, "Don't look up, don't look up, don't look up, don't worry about it. There's nothing to see here." And that's the focus of the movie, is don't look up. And God's going, no, look up and repent, because I love you. It's not for me that any man should perish, but that all should have eternal life. And so when I look at the narrative of the end times, it's the last act of mercy on humanity, that God literally rearranges the celestial bodies. It says men's foreboding after looking at the things coming upon the earth, so that you might repent and put your faith and your hope in the completed work of Jesus Christ. It's not an act of God's horrible, tyrannical judgment against humanity, which is what the liberals and the reprobates want to make you think. It's actually God's last great act of love. And even his love to destroy the wickedness on the earth, to destroy these ruling elite, to destroy the deceptions, to tear them down. That's what he's doing, because he loves you so much that while you're his enemy, he sent his son to die for you. Like while you're at your worst, while you're hacking off your boobs and you're mutilating your genitalia and you're slaughtering babies in the womb and you're doing your incantations and your occultic practices, and yet when you say, "God forgive me," he's like, done. Because that's what we do.
That's amazing.
I'll restore all, daughter. I'll restore all, son. That's what we do. You were deceived. I love you. I'll wash you and cleanse you, and I'll give you white raiments to put on now to cover all that nakedness and shame. It's done. And that's what the enemy doesn't want people to know and understand.
And even if you're on the outside looking in when it comes to faith, you've got to admit that's the greatest story ever. It's the greatest narrative, the greatest story arc. It's the greatest outreach that there could ever be imagined. All right, so if I have a Ford truck, all right, so it's fresh, clean, just wash it, it's black. If somebody comes by and hits a mud puddle beside me, that car didn't hit me, but all the debris from the water but splash on one side. So I'd have little specks of water and dirt all down one side, right? Is that kind of what you're talking about here when you've got the earth? There's a field of small debris flying by. You say shotgun blast. Yeah. That's different than one ginormous.
That's exactly it.
It's not one big rock kaboom. It's like this is going by. The majority of it's we're going to get winged or clipped, and there's going to be some spray off of that's going to freckle the earth. And
it's like a bird shot from a shotgun versus a slug, right? You're not getting hit with the slug. You're getting hit with bird shot. And so it's not an earth-ending event. That is not true. I don't care what Hollywood's trying to tell you or what different authors are out there publishing in. This celestial event is not earth-ending. It doesn't matter what the central planners think either. The Lord is the one who eventually creates a new heaven and a new earth. The asteroid doesn't do it, but it talks specifically about a third. It's all about a third is impacted by these things. So that's your analogy with the truck getting sprayed is a perfect analogy. And when we talk about a debris trail, most people can't fathom on some of these comets and asteroids and other space bodies that are out there. There's tens of millions of them out there that they're tracking, right? That they're always tracking these PHOs, potentially hazardous objects. But their debris trail is like, 20 miles wide by 1,800 miles long, which then you get into the billions. Like these debris trails are huge because these bodies have their own gravitational effects, plus they're off-gassing and they're breaking apart in different ways. And so there's a lot going on within the astronomy of stuff and the physics of it all. But that's exactly what you described is what we're talking about.
So what's the actionable item? Okay, people listen to this, they're like, oh, I don't know if I should just go to Costco and buy all the booze they got. I don't know if I should just, do that. Like, we got 25, 2029, what do you do? What's the actionable item for people? Do you stock up on popcorn? Do you move out the country? Do you get a boat? Do you get an Airstream? Do you hope for the best? What do you do?
Yeah. Well, and I'll start off.
Go underground. I mean, have you ever seen the?
I'll start off with the basics. And
real quick before you jump into that, you mentioned this earlier about the cleft of the rock and going into space. Have you seen the cartoon thing that Yuval Noah Harari lists as his like favorite story narrative cartoon thing? It's this whole cartoon of basically man throughout history, the world being destroyed by something from outer space, and then men going on rockets and leaving.
Yeah.
Have you seen that cut? And I have this in my notes, but it didn't dig into it, and this is why out of nowhere you have the public-private interface with all the space agencies and central planners of the world now tapping into the Elon Musk of the world because they are in a race literally for their lives. And this gets into all the global elite readouts in New Zealand, right? And all the elites meeting up in Antarctica under the Obama administration. John Kerry going there and all this stuff.
Yep, John Kerry, Christine Lagarde, all these central planners and the Bank of International Settlements, World Economic. I mean, it's all because they know what's coming. So, in answer to your question, oh, by the way, side note, just hearing you say 2025, have you noticed that everything is about the year 2025? And it has been for the last 30 years. UN Agenda 2030, UN Agenda 2020, the Great Reset by 2025, electric car. Why the electric car things? Remember I told you what the central planners figured out about the simulations about this asteroid impact? The whole push and green movement is to reduce your mobility because they know what's coming. They do not want 18 million people from the greater New York City area flooding into the rest of America. They have to reduce mobility because they know it's the human, as Michael Yon, a seminal, researcher and former special forces guy, he's out there just pushing the envelope on this work. So I want to give Michael Yon credit for this word he coined, human osmotic pressure. HOP. Human osmotic pressure is the number one thing. This is why the green movement, this is why the reduction of coal-fired things, this is why they're pushing for the removal of all combustion engines, but there's no infrastructure whatsoever for electric vehicles. It's to kill your mobility because you're easier to control. This is why all of the human agenda is bringing people into the city. That's why
throughout history, teenagers wanted to get a car the day they turned 16.
Yep.
Because now I got mobility. I got control. I got options.
And notice what all their language is 2025, 2025, 2025, 2020. Georgia Guidestones. We got to keep humanity and perpetuate, with 500 million population. That's all we can handle. Why? Because we know what's coming. The wrath of God is coming. They know it. They know God more than any Christian knows God. They know the word more than any Christian knows the word. They know, but they think they can win. That is the Nimrodian Faustian hubris, is they think they can win and they can go into the Denver International Airport, deep underground military bases, and all the other ones and run into the mountains, hide themselves on the rocks, or get off the earth and set their nest among the stars, Obadiah 4, and yet all of their attempts are going to fail. All their attempts are going to fail. So, in answer to your question, what should people be doing? Or, what's the actionable item? I say very plainly and unashamedly, and I don't give two craps where you stand in your religiosity. Repent, for the day of the Lord is at hand. Jesus Christ is Lord. And every knee in heaven, the heavens, and on earth, and under the earth, it's all the scriptures, are going to bow their knee and confess that he's the Lord of Lords and King of Kings. And so you repent and you get right with the Lord, because when you're right with the Lord, none of it matters. When you're right with the Lord, all this goes, I'm good to go in my King, my warrior King Christ Jesus. Psalm 112 says, they have no fear of bad news. No fear. They are not shaken. Their hearts are steadfast, trust in the Lord. Their hearts are secure because they know their God. And their children will be mighty in the land. I don't have fear. There's natural, tangible wonderings and wanderings about these things. And there can be physiological responses at time of, maybe some anxiety of the unknowns and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I'm like, bro, I'm good to go. I know my God. Death has no sting. My life has been bought and paid for. I have no fear of dying. I go, get me in the fight, God. What's my mission set in this generation? Teach me to serve this generation while I have no fear. So that's why repentance and getting right with God is primary. Then he's your provision. He's your sheltering. He's your covering. He's your food. He's your drink. He's your strong tower. He's your defense against enemies too numerous for you. I don't trust in horses and chariots. I trust in the name of God, right? Repent. Yeah. Now, on a physical level, there are tangible things that you can do and that I do, because it says a wise man foresees trouble coming and plans accordingly, but a fool goes on for it. With regards to the second coming of Jesus Christ, we have the parable of the 10 bridesmaids or virgins, 5 foolish, 5 wise. They adequately prepare. Joseph prepared in the 7 years of plenty for the 7 years of famine, and by it actually preserved the genealogical line to the Savior Jesus Christ. It was so much more than Joseph and Pharaoh in Egypt. It's about Christ. That's what Joseph was a type and shadow of, and he tangibly, practically prepared. You have stories of an Abraham or a Lot or a Joseph or a David or a Jonathan or whatever. These guys were warriors and they were priests. So they had physical, tactical acumen. They physically prepared and tangibly prepared, but they were also spiritually, had a spiritual depth in God and in Christ Jesus that stood the test of time. To where David literally, as a 14-year-old boy, ran out and cut the freaking head off of a Nephilim, off of a giant, off of a God man created in the image of those guys And as a 14-year-old boy, because he knew his God, he literally slayed that Joker and then cut his head off. Don't let me get into that. Goes into ancient things that they could regenerate, blah, blah, blah. Watch all your X-Men movies and whatever else. They're telling you what these guys were able to do, right? But so then it's like, then you have the Israelites. They're like grasshoppers in the sight of the giants in the land. There was giants in the earth in those days and also thereafter. And Canaan, all these demigod freak shows with high technology. And yet in God, they routed them. See, the dread of the Lord went before them. What is a toddler going to do to a guy like me? Nothing. But now if the fear of the Lord is put on me because that toddler has a knowing of his God, I'm going to shriek and horn run. So again, this is why like practical preparedness is of value, but spiritual preparedness is of the higher value. But yes, how about let's get practical? How about communications? How about mobility? To me, mobility is the number one primary tool of all preparedness. Every professional pedigree background that I was in, my mobility was what equipped me to either do my job or fail on my job and die. It doesn't matter if I was in the Marine Corps, if I was a police officer, if I was a paramedic, if I was a firefighter, if I was on disaster response. My comms and my mobility. I don't care anything about the weapons. I don't care anything about all these other platforms. I don't even care about food and water preparation. Guess why? Mobilities and comms gives me access to all that. So it's all about access. Mobility and comms is what gives me access. If I happen to not have one piece of food or one round of ammunition or whatever for personal protection for me and my family, because of my mobility and my comms, I now can get to those things, or I can get to other people who have those things, or I can gain access to those things. So those things are primary. What you want to do is you want to be where everybody else isn't. So when the emergency alert broadcast,
communication and mobility, communication mobility. I mean, that's easy to say. Do you get lots of cans and string? Do you get a sat phone? What kind of communications, ways to communicate with the people you know, love, and care about, with your kids, family, wife, all that kind of stuff? What kind of ham radio?
No, I'm actually, and this is again, a lot of armchair preppers will freak out about this. I am anti ham radio. I am pro sat phone. Ham radio takes a learning curve. Ham radio takes a license. Ham radio takes a very thorough understanding of frequencies and repeaters and blah, blah, blah. And ham radio is terrestrial based, which means any slight hiccup in any systems that are terrestrial based, it's gone. Satellite phone is completely different. And satellite phones piggyback off of obviously extraterrestrial, right? Off Earth, a low Earth orbit, and even other different levels of ionosphere and blah, 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 stratospheric communication. And generally they're piggybacking on military industrial telecoms. So it's as true end-to-end encryption as you can get. One, that's a primary factor. And two, they're the least likely to be corrupted because the infrastructure for the B system is all about telecom. You can't destroy that telecom because it's all about counterfeit omniscience and omnipresence through technology. So the likelihood of that being taken out is very slim.
And sat phones are affordable, easily acquired. We all have them. I mean, I'll use it day in, day out, but it's an easy thing to keep. I keep it in my truck when I travel. This kind of stuff. I know my kids' numbers. I got a network of people that I trust to know. I got their numbers. It's an easy way for. I mean, it's cheaper than a cell phone. To have. You may not going to talk on it all day, but they're
practical, right? You don't have a learning curve. You pick it up and use it like any other phone you have your whole life. So there's no learning curve to it.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah. And then mobility, probably you're better off with like a F-250 diesel than a Tesla.
Yeah. Well, and actually I always had F-350 and 250 diesels, and I switched to a 7.3 Godzilla gasser because of the supply chain. And it was crazy because I did this 2 years ago, and lo and behold, Russia just banned all exports of diesel fuel, which is going to have an effect that people won't understand for probably a couple months. Anything from trains to trucks and everything else. And so I actually streamlined all my vehicles and switched them back over to gas. Even though there's a higher refining process, the availability factor, my ability to siphon or scavenge or do whatever, is much higher than with the diesel, especially with the newer diesels with all their stupid DEF things and all their emissions things. Those things are ticking time bombs for disasters. So
what's a Godzilla?
It's a new motor that came out in 2021. It's a 7.3 gasser motor, and it's got almost the same horsepower as the new diesels that are turboed. Just the torque is lower, obviously, because it's not a diesel. But I'm looking at it right now in my window. It's awesome. It's an overland truck. So everything I do is with practical preparedness. It's like my thing with mobility, because I would have died in multiple different semi-permissive and non-permissive environments if I didn't have a sat phone, because I lost my mobility. So when I speak to these things, I'm not an armchair prepper. I hate armchair preppers. They have no clue what this looks like tangibly in semi-permissive and non-permissive environments. I know because I've been there. And when a sidewall on the only operating truck got ripped on a piece of coral because of the tidal surge, we were out of mobility, remote from nowhere. We had pallets of freeze-dried food, pallets of 25-year shelf life food airdropped to us, but all the water was poisoned and salinated by a storm surge. You couldn't boil water. There was no energy to boil water. You didn't have the energy to boil water to make your food. So now the food's worthless. Now your mobility is gone. I got a sat phone. I need help. So that's why I go, these are the critical components. I always say, if you could not drive over a parking block in front of you at Walmart because you nosed into a parking spot, and then there's a flash mob, which is happening every day, everywhere, or they're blocking interstates in downtown LA or whatever, and they're dragging white people out of their cars and beating them half to death, and you can't turn around in the median and drive the opposite direction because it's wet grass, you're dead. If you can't drive over the parking block in front of you in a Walmart with your vehicle that you currently have, you're dead. If you can't, go over some rough terrain and even, a 4 to 6 inch gap in the road, you're dead. If you don't have 12 ply tires plus and your sidewalls rip on a piece of coral, you're dead. And so I go, these are the considerations that I'm looking at. And actually, we have very tangible, prescient, contemporary examples with all the flash mob, Ryan, BLM Antifa stuff, blah, 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 going on. That should go, oh crap, I should have no consideration about gas mileage. Get off of your 45-mile gas. I do not own a vehicle that gets more than 12 miles a gallon, and I don't give a crap because I'm safe. I do not care. I have no regard for gas mileage whatsoever. I just went and picked up a van last week in Minnesota, and it is a Quigley 4x4 converted van for my family, lifted with zombie bumpers on it, because everything has to revolve around that mentality. And it's not just about zombie apocalypse. It's about practical preparedness. It's about snowstorms, ice storms, the astrocatastrophism, the geoengineering, these crazy weather patterns. Your mobility, I saw it with a derecho and a wind shear that hit Iowa, and I went in there to do disaster relief. If people didn't have a vehicle that they could have drove 3 hours away was the nearest place that they could find a gas pump that had power to put fuel in their generator. Their mobility saved them. The only ones that got out were the ones whose tanks were full and they had backup fuel and they had the mobility to get out of the threat area. And I would interview them and talk to them because I'm always gleaning practical preparedness knowledge from people.
Those are phenomenal. And you have I'm gonna call it a symposium, but a conference in the right word, convention. What is it that you have? You had one in July.
We have summits every year.
Summit. That's a better word for it. Where people come and you teach and learn, and you do things for churches and all kinds of stuff where it's okay, practical, real life stuff. What you can be doing in light of this. Okay, so this is coming and happening. Something's either going to hit you or it's not going to hit you. So let's just say you got a 50-50 shot on that, even though you got a much better odd. But the point will be when this becomes visible and the word gets out, it's going to be more chaos in the earth. Is that what you're saying?
Human chaos factor. Yep, they call it human chaos factor. And like I say, I always want to give credit to guys like Michael Yon, human osmotic pressure, right? And so this is what you're looking at. And I've worked in disaster areas and war-torn areas everywhere. and seeing the depths of like literally masses, hordes of refugees walking across open terrain with nothing but a blanket. It's happening in your modern lexicon while you're unaware. And it's going to happen here because we're owed it. There is no nation in the history of, do comparative history, there is no nation in the history of humanity, not even Babylon or Egypt or Canaan, that is as wicked as the United States of America. You've just been convinced to worship it. But what you don't understand is what's right under the thin veneer of your patriotic, rah, democratic republic. It's built upon something. Look at what the CIA does. Look at what the intelligence agencies do. Look at what we export and what our primary thing. Look at what our black budgets are based off of. Look at the Epstein Island, which is just a microcosm of the reality of what feeds and funds America. It is the souls of men and women. It is the souls of children. It is the drugs. It is the pharmakia. It is the sorceries. It's the cultism. It's Babylonian money magic on a level that people can't understand. People don't understand the reality of what's coming to America in particular because of what we're owed.
Yeah, we pretty much just export, debt, and drugs, and sin.
Yep.
For the most part. So, your book, and you got a study guide as well. I'm gonna just drive people this. I cannot say that I've read it and gone through it, but I can tell you that I am, and that is coming for sure. You got your website, omegadynamics.org. What would you say is kind of a sign off, with this coming? You throughout this whole thing, I noticed your language. You would give a phrase and almost like an order, like, hey, research this phrase, research this phrase, this verse, research this. What was God telling you? I think that's a really great idea. Like if I only had one conversation with my son and something was going to happen to me, I'd be like, okay, hey, love you, get right with God. And then I would give him, actionable items that were more like empowering him, to go on. There's nothing I could give him. I couldn't say, hey, here, this will take care of you forever. It's got to be something in him that's going to move forward. That's kind of what you've done with our listeners this whole time, whether they caught that or not. They can attend one of your events. They can continue to follow on your YouTube, which I think is phenomenal. You can just search Jamie Walden on YouTube and get that. But what would you have to kind of to sign off to people? Say, hey, this is coming. They need to look into this Apophis asteroid thing themselves and look into that. And the majority of what I've seen on your page is a direction to living a life that's empowered, powerful, the way that God's created you to do, that's honoring to him, of service to the people that are around you, and making wise decisions so that you're not more vulnerable than necessary to things that are happening around you that you can't control.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know what a summation would be as a sign off other than, it really is all about Jesus. That's the central. He is the singularity of everything is in Jesus. And so like when you're rooted in that, you actually will be wise about these things. And you'll actually be shrewd, and you'll actually be prudent. You'll actually have a resiliency. You'll have an emotional resiliency. You'll have a spiritual resiliency. You'll have a physical resiliency. Jesus, the bridegroom coming, you would be a practical prepper. You'd be 5 wise virgins. Jesus, you would know your weapons of warfare that are mighty to tearing down every stronghold and false pretense. Jesus, you would know him in you, donned with the literal armor of God, that you've been given the power to trample on the lion and the serpent and over all the powers of darkness. Jesus, hidden in the true and better cleft of the rock, not the counterfeit rock that they're trying to hide themselves in, but the true and better cleft of the rock, that I have no fear, I have no shame, no guilt in life, and no fear in death. This is the power of Christ in me. From life's first cry to final breath, Jesus commands my destiny. It's like, I don't know how to sum it up, and I make no apologies for it. I can do cool guy stuff all day long. I can talk cool guy stuff. I train combat rifle, combat pistol. I teach stuff like that. I'm like a super bro in that reality just because of my background. I do adventure sports and triathlons and overlanding, blah, blah. Like, that's what I do. Like, there's very tangible, cool guy stuff that you can get into. But at the end of the day, I'm like, dude, it means nothing compared to knowing Christ. And so if you balk at that because you think that this is foolish language, whatever listeners are like getting all pissed off hearing me talk about Jesus, I'm like, bro, then walk away, man. Like, go the other way. Like, if you've counted the cost and it's too high, get off the field of battle. That's what God told the people around Gideon. He's like, bro, you're double-minded. You're whatever. Get off the field of battle. I don't need you. But for those who are so jealous for the glory of God that even with the rear with the gear, they pull the water to their mouth because they're looking for the fight to protect the glory and the honor of God. He goes, they get to watch me work against my enemies. And I'm like, bro, that's who I want to be enumerated by. So I really don't care about anything else. And I know like the men and women who know their God have been foreknown for this generation for a mission set. And it's not weak. It's not pathetic. It's not ineffectual. It's not seeker friendly. It's not Bethel. It's not Hillsong. It's not Bill Hybels. It's not whatever. It's not all these weak ass things going on. It has power. And it's like to effectively carry forward your mission set under the battle flag, the banner of your God, which is love, all the way to mission accomplishment. So it's like, dude, get in the fight or get out of my way. And so that's the only thing that I would say.
You know, you look historically, there's movies about, Nazi rise and occupation and like, would you rather be sniffling on your knees and making deals to make your life more comfortable, or would you rather be a Bonhoeffer? But it's like, no matter what, we all die. Everyone so far, maybe Enoch, there's a couple, but for the most part, this is, my wife's grandmother just turned 101 in July. Like, that's a long life. That's impressive, right? She has her own garden. She drives herself. She's super ornery, and kind of a challenge, to be around because she's so full of like just telling you. She already canned beans this morning. She'll call you at 6 o'clock. But 101's not that long. Like none of us are going to make it out of this alive. That's one of the few kind of guarantees. And it's like, I think living a life that, no regrets, not dying on your knees, crying, like just going down, swinging, serving, living life, taking care of the people that depend on you, and to stand before God someday and say, you know what, to the very best of my ability, I didn't blink, and I leaned into what you were calling me to do. I think that would be a much better conversation than like, hey, I lived an extra 6 months because I compromised and made this agreement and I did this, or I got, I was able to, I had and I'm not against having things, work hard, make money, do stuff. I'm all about it.
Yeah.
But this is probably more of a season to be a Joseph preparing than to be collecting jet skis. And so, like stocking up things of value, that's actually going to be useful, to you. I think of the scene on the Titanic where like the guy made the arrangement to get a raft, a boat. And at a certain point, the guy that worked on the boat, like took his money and threw it in the air. He's like, I don't, it means nothing at this moment.
Nothing. And people don't understand that. And when the proverbial crap hits the fan, none of that stuff that you thought matters. It goes to baseline, rudimentary, fundamental, survivability. But what I teach and preach to you all the time is like, you shouldn't be surviving. You should be thriving. And so thriving comes because you were prudent, and your God. So you're secure. Even if you have nothing, you're still secure, and you're thriving spiritually and emotionally, which means then you're thriving physiologically, right? You're thriving in your physicality because you've trained for the fight you're not yet in, and you are ready for it. And it's just crazy to me and burdensome how few are going to be able to endure even the first opening salvo. I mean, if everybody balked at that thing that just happened, we all know what we're talking about the last 3 years. If you balked under that there was not even a body in the street, dude. Are you kidding me? People balked at that. Read the book of Revelation. It says there's going to be so many bodies in the streets, there'll be nobody to bury them. And like, if you balked at that to preserve what? Your normal, to preserve your reprobate Starbucks that you're giving your money to them, like to preserve what? Pastor shuttering your church, your stupid gaming systems for your youth group center that you just built. I mean, this is insane, man. It's insane. And so, and again, that's why I say, like, there's a lateness to the hour that most people couldn't even conceive of, even if they were told, which we just told them for the last 2 hours. They still their normalcy bias, their self-preservation, their fear, or their pride won't allow them to actually enter into the reality of how late the hour is.
Jamie, I want to continue this conversation in the future. Would you come back on the show? I got a lot of other topics I'd love to hit with you. I'd love to join you with my wife, Stacy. And just there's a lot inside that brain we want to kind of squeeze out like a lemon and get everything out of there possible. Would you come
more
back
like
again?
A pea brain?
Yeah,
it's more like a pea brain. So bring tweezers. But yeah, we can for sure, man. I'd love to do it. It'd be awesome.
Thanks, man. I had a blast. Really enjoyed it. Again, you guys go to omegadynamics.org. If you just listen to this, do come back and watch the video version on Rumble or BitChute or one of the video-based places, because there's a lot of things we showed on the screen today that you're going to want. But again, the book Omega Dynamics by Jamie Walden is available on Amazon. We'll have a link to it down below. There's a study guide as well. Even if you don't fill it out, you'll feel smarter by having it, and that goes a long ways as well. These are actionable items, things that you can really do to get right, starting out on the inside, and then again continue making good choices on the outside and in the places that you have influence. Jamie, thanks for your time. Thanks for doing what you're doing. Thanks for being brave, and thanks for being really clear and a bright light in a time that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, bro. I appreciate it.
And thank you, Flyover family. Thanks for being on this journey with us, where we're learning together. We're taking piles of notes together. Share this episode with somebody that came to mind that you think could enjoy it. Then maybe go to coffee, discuss this, and say, hey, what's going on? What are we going to do in case of these problems? A couple of solutions that we have for you. One is getting out of fake currency and preparing to be able to actually thrive, not just survive, but thrive by having physical silver. Is a way that you can navigate these kind of crazy times. Go to flyovergold.com, set up a conversation with Dr. Kirk Elliott or one of his team members. They'll take incredibly good care of you. Again, we've known him for over 25 years. I trust him completely. And our children, my in-laws, my family, everybody that I know, I always direct them towards Dr. Kirk Elliott, and I get nothing but great reviews. Flyovergold.com, and have a conversation with him on your money. He has 2 PhDs. I think he's the guy for this conversation. The other one is patriotmobile.com/flyover. Go to patriotmobile.com/flyover and start taking the dollars that are being donated towards causes that you're probably not excited about, and move it towards somebody who's supporting Turning Point USA, veterans causes, pro-life movements. Go to the website. You can see all of the things that they support. Tens of millions of dollars a year go towards causes that are definitely anti-liberty, anti-freedom, and anti-America, and for sure anti-God. They're the only cell phone provider out there that is openly Christian. And they're proud of it. So go to patriotmobile.com/flyover, or you can call 972-PATRIOT. They got representatives that are right here in the United States, based in Texas and California, that can answer your call, walk you through it. If you don't even know what to do, just say, listen to the Flyover podcast. Go 972-PATRIOT. Someone will answer, and they can even transfer electronically the phone you already have onto their service. Or they can set you up with a new one. They can even buy you out of your existing contract. And if you tell them you watch the Flyover podcast, they wipe away the activation fee, which is a pretty sweet deal. So you guys, we're in this together. Let's keep praying. Let's stay strong. Let's lock arms together. It's up to us to make the best choices we can for the future of our country, our children, and our families, and keep educating ourselves in the process. I can't wait to dive into Jamie's book. He's got a lot of great answers, something you can share with others. Make it a great week. Again, share this episode with somebody, hit the like button, and we'll see you again next Saturday for another conspiracy conversation. Have you ever wondered about ancient civilizations or the moon landing, chemtrails, the Nephilim, demons? Those are all things that fascinate me. Decided to use our platform of the Flyover Conservative podcast and create a new show called Conspiracy Conversations. Every Saturday morning, we get together with some of the brightest minds in the world that have spent thousands of hours on a topic, churning through the research, looking at things. They've traveled, they've been to the locations, they're looking for the truth because they're as curious as you and I are about what's true. What is really true about our past? where we came from, where we are, and where we're going. We don't bring on guests to iron out their wrinkles and find out the things that we disagree on, no more than I go to the grocery store and try to put everything in the whole store in my cart. I just try to walk out with better ideas than I had when I walked in. If you got something inside you that's like, what about that? I don't even know if I agree, but I would like to hear them out. If you have an open mind and a curious heart, we've got a show for you every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, conspiracyconversations.com.
Hello, Flyover family. Join me every Wednesday for the Prophetic Report at 11:11 Central. You can find it on Rumble. You can find it on the Flyover app. We have such an incredible time of hearing from all of these different prophetic voices like Robin Bullock, Julie Green, Barry Wunsch, Amanda Grace, and Hank Kuhneman. Every week, it's either 5 or 6 different prophets that are speaking, and what's interesting is God is speaking through them, and all of these voices come together like puzzle pieces. It is so exciting to hear what the Lord is saying. We're hearing from medical, we're hearing from military intelligence, we're hearing from the financial world, we're hearing from mainstream media, but the most important is, what is God saying? He has not fallen off the throne. He's not nervous. He's not chewing his nails. He is in control. He has plans to prosper us and not to harm us. What a great time to be alive, and I'm so excited for you to join me every Wednesday at 11:11. Are you having a hard time sleeping at night, thinking, what am I going to do about my finances?
You know, times are really changing. They're changing fast. Let me give you a quick example of how. In 1920, if you had a $20 bill and 1 ounce of gold, you could go into any men's clothing store and buy an entire suit. You could buy the jacket, the shirt, the belt, shoes, the whole bit. Today, that $20 bill, what's it going to get you?
Not much.
Maybe the socks, maybe a handkerchief, but the 1 ounce of gold could still buy you the entire suit at any men's store in America. That's the difference. That's what inflation does to your dollar. It's a deflating dollar caused by inflation. Now today, that's happening faster than ever. You need somebody that you trust that can help get you out of a fake currency and into something that's going to keep you safe.
And we know a guy that has 2 PhDs by the name of Dr. Kirk Elliott. We have known him for over 25 years, and he's someone we completely trust.
You need somebody that you can get a hold of, somebody that's going to be there for you to get back out of it, and then maybe back into the stock market, maybe back into something else when things settle down. But right now is not that time. You need somebody that you trust and somebody you can call and make those worries go away.
That's exactly right. So you can go to flyovergold.com, fill out your information for a free consultation, or you can call 720-605-3900. Do it today.
You'll be glad you did.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Flyover Conservatives podcast with David and Stacy Whited. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave us a comment below. Lastly, if you enjoyed today's podcast, share with those who came to mind. Be blessed and make it a great day.